Ophelia Lennox. She had a head full of dark, curly hair.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Victoria, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and our YouTube channel today. We're excited to have you and excited to hear more about Ophelia. I wanted to say I love her middle name. It's just so cute. So I'm excited to meet her a little bit more. So as we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you guys located? What does your family look like? And what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. So I am married. My husband's name is Stephen. We've been married for 6 years. We actually went to the same high school, but we're not high school sweethearts. We reconnected after we both had moved back to the area we grew up. We're working together in a hotel. And then about a year into being married, we moved from upstate New York, where we grew up, to Brooklyn, where I manage weddings at a boutique hotel in Brooklyn.
Wow.
And my husband works in like food and beverage, and currently works in the tea industry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, we met working in a hotel, kind of similar paths a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We have a rescue dog named Sage. Actually, today is her 5th birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah. And last year, May of 2020, we were blessed with our second daughter, Willa June. And sort of having Willa in New York City in the middle of a pandemic kind of shifted some things for us. So we actually purchased a home upstate where some of our family live. So we kind of are splitting our time between upstate New York and Brooklyn at the moment.
Wow. That's a lot of fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. What do you guys like to do in your spare time, or do you have spare time?
We have a little spare time right now, but when we're upstate, we definitely enjoy getting outside. There's lots of great hiking and just nice like walking trails. We certainly used to love going out to eat and enjoying good food and wine. Doing a lot less of that these days.
Yes, of course.
For a number of reasons. I have been trying to teach myself how to sew.
Good job.
To bake. Not the greatest, but I'm trying.
I know. You pick up these pandemic hobbies, right?
Yeah.
That is great. Well, thank you so much for telling us a little bit about yourself. And at the time of this recording, when was Ophelia born? How long ago was that?
Just over 2 years ago.
Just over 2 years.
January of 2019.
Okay. Thank you. And so at the time it was just you and your husband, Stephen. And so Ophelia was your first. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
And how did that pregnancy go? Was that something that you guys planned? Or was that a little bit of a surprise?
I guess a little bit of both.
Oh, really?
We sort of had like stopped preventing pregnancy. I always say that Stephen was ready to be a dad like as soon as we got married. I was the one probably dragging my feet a little bit more. I'm the more practical planner type. I plan weddings.
Yeah.
So it's sort of in my DNA. But definitely knew we wanted to have a family. Stephen was traveling a lot with his job at the time, and I was actually just transitioning into a new role at my job. So it was a little bit of a surprise when we found out we were pregnant. It just kind of, I guess, happened a little quicker than we thought.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, blessing for that.
Yes.
We didn't have to think about it too much.
Yeah. And how did the pregnancy go? Was it morning sickness, or how'd you feel?
Yeah, definitely some morning sickness. I think what actually triggered me to like take a pregnancy test, I was like ravenous, hungry, and had was eating lots and lots of eggs and just very, very hungry, and then realized this is not totally normal, and then that turned into some food aversions and morning sickness. But that was pretty normal morning sickness, and I think it ended after the first trimester.
So not too bad.
Very, very normal.
Very normal
symptoms.
And when you were going into the doctor, how was she looking? How were your appointments?
Well, our very first appointment where we confirmed, we went to a normal OB office. I actually just hadn't really been set up properly with an OB after moving to Brooklyn. So we just kind of went someplace, and I knew it wasn't where I wanted to have my long-term care.
Right.
Funny enough, when we did move to Brooklyn, my mom researched birthing centers in New York City, and so I knew of one, and that was kind of what I was hoping for. So
good.
I quickly transferred care to a birthing center in Brooklyn. And yeah, I mean, everything was really great. The birthing center care is with midwives, and it was a bit more hands off. I think, the only ultrasound I got was at 20 weeks, and everything was measuring fine, and she was looking active and, healthy.
Everything that she needed to look at. So were you guys planning on finding out what her gender was?
Yes. Yeah. And we found out at 20 weeks.
Were you expecting a girl? What were you guys hoping? I guess maybe hoping for?
I was expecting a girl. My sister has 6 boys, and I just sort of had this feeling that I would probably have girls.
You're going to help with the girl ratio there.
Yeah.
She would get spoiled there. So everything was looking really good, and you were feeling pretty good, I'm assuming, in the second and third trimester, generally.
Yeah. Second trimester was a breeze. The nausea went away, and was definitely having better energy. I felt really good.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, one other question I wanted to actually ask was, so when you found out that you were having a girl, and were you planning on, did you guys have a list of names and such? Because Ophelia is such a sweet name. It's a beautiful name. And then Lennox is just, that's such a great name.
Yeah. We had a lot of names, and we kind of knew that we didn't want anyone else's opinion. So we didn't want to make a name or state a name.
Yes.
And then have people weigh in.
Yes.
And I also kind of felt like I wanted to meet her before I gave her name to make sure that it suited her. I just feel like, what if you put the name up on a wall, and then they're born and they just don't they don't seem like that
Yeah,
in
exactly.
person.
Yeah.
So yeah, so basically we had a handful of names, and then we kind of had narrowed it down to, we had actually narrowed it down to Ophelia or Lennox.
Oh, okay.
And so we weren't sure which it was going to be.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. That's
Yeah.
great. Okay. So, everything was going along fine. And, so when, just kind of walk us through, when did you find out things were not going to go well?
So I was 39 weeks and 4 days. So she's born in January. And so in the work that I do in weddings, we have obviously kind of a wedding season, and like it sort of just worked out great that, like, in theory it was going to be like this slow season,
Right.
that I
The
was
off
going to,
season. Yeah.
yeah. And so I just started my maternity leave on like the Saturday before. And then we had company holiday party on the Monday before. And then I was going into our then like weekly appointment on, it was a Wednesday morning. But the day before, I had kind of planned to meet with a couple of friends, run a couple errands, and I felt a little bit off that day. I had like sort of an upset stomach, but from like birthing class and things I had read and heard that, you know, your body could be, you know, preparing for labor and like could have some sort of like flushing out. And so to me, that's felt like what my body was doing. So I didn't really think much of it at that point. And then, yeah, our weekly appointments were always first thing in the morning. And the birthing center office that I would go to for my appointments was within walking distance of our apartment. So this day, Stephen was able to go with me. And we walked over, and on the way there, we were talking about possible childcare options that we, you know, sound promising. And about how we were going to stop and get bagels on the way back after our appointment, which we did often when we would go together. And so we got to the appointment, and there was actually a new midwife who was not really training, I mean, sort of shadowing the other midwife. It was her first day at the clinic or at the center. And so I, you know, did the normal things, and they would just normally check with the Doppler as soon as you would sit down and like do. Oh, actually, I do. They would check your vitals before you would get a physical check. And I had actually lost a pound since the previous week, which was kind of weird. And then my blood pressure was like really low, which also was weird. Like literally any other time I'd been to an appointment, I had great blood pressure, you know, everything. Like I was gaining the right amount. Like, you know, I passed the glucose test. So these were two things that were very odd.
Yeah.
And then I sat down, and so this new midwife starts to use the Doppler and is like searching around to try to find her heartbeat and can't find it. And, I didn't really think anything of it at the time. I was just like, oh, she's new. She doesn't know where to look. I feel like Ophelia had been like positioned certain times where like they would have to look in a certain area.
Gotcha.
Previously, but I mean, there was always like at least a faint sound of a heartbeat. So she kept trying, and then the other midwife that had been there longer, she also tried, and couldn't find a heartbeat. And then at that point, they said that they wanted us to go to a hospital. And
what were you thinking when they told you to go to the hospital?
I had no idea. Like, I felt like something was wrong, obviously, and felt a little panicked, but the thought of like the knowledge of stillbirth to me was something so foreign that I could not even imagine that was what was happening to me at the time. I'd actually watched like Call of the Midwife, not too, like maybe a week or two before, and I watched an episode with a stillbirth, and I was like, oh well, I mean, that's what happened way back then.
Way back then, yeah, exactly.
Like that doesn't happen now. And so we got out of the room, and we're in the waiting room. There's another couple there. And I was, getting upset, and the midwife kind of said like, oh, don't panic. Like, just don't panic. Just wait and see what happens at the hospital. And so we called an Uber because we had, we walked there. And so we're just waiting for this Uber to come. And we just went to the closest hospital, which is a short drive, but unfortunately is not a very great hospital in Brooklyn. There's some, really great hospitals in New York City, but there are some really not great places as well. And this place is notoriously not well known for its care.
Yes. Okay.
So we go there and had to go through like the emergency area, and I believe that the midwife had called over, and so they just sent us up to labor and delivery, and we had to wait and like fill out paperwork before we got into a room. And at that point, I think I texted my mom, and she immediately called me, and I just told her what had happened, but like that we were at the hospital and getting checked out. And I think she probably left work at that point and started driving to us, I think right away. She lives like about 2 hours away. So then we sort of got, I guess, admitted, or not admitted. We got into like a triage room, where they brought an ultrasound in, and where they confirmed that there was no heartbeat. And it was this male doctor that sat next to me, and confirmed it. I don't remember like if he said it before or after I started wailing. I mean, it was just like this sort of thing that sort of just took over me. Like I don't know that I've ever, like, the word wailing is just,
It's so perfect for it
yeah.
describes it perfectly. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It
like,
just
it's
is.
just more than like tears. It's just
Yes.
like your whole body
Yeah.
just expressing.
Yeah.
And but at some point he said, you know, this is more common than you think. Which, I mean, I don't know if he was trying to be comforting or what it was, but it wasn't comforting.
Yeah.
And they gave us some time, Stephen and I, some time alone, and you know, we just cried and hugged, and I remember like they're looking at a clock on the wall and just feeling this sort of like out of body feeling of like, is this real? Like, is that the real time that I'm looking at? Like, is this reality? It like didn't feel real in that time. Yeah, but it was real. And yeah. Yeah, so I feel like yeah, I'm not sure how long we were in that room. But it felt like pretty quickly it was just like, okay, well, this is next what we have to do. And it didn't feel like we had a whole lot of options. But essentially they wanted to admit me right then, and start an induction.
So there was not really any like discussion about, oh, you can go home and get some stuff, or it was just like, okay, we're going to admit this was what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I'm not really sure if it was just because I was how far along I was or what it was, but yeah, it was basically like, all right, we're going to move you out of this room and into another room, and this is what's going to happen. And I think I remember being like, wait, do I like actually have to like give birth to her? Like thinking, isn't like a C-section an option? Even though that was nothing I wanted.
Right.
You know, was planning a birthing center birth. And yeah.
By this time, actually, so your mom started heading down to meet you. Did you guys end up calling her again, or any of your family in that time?
We did. Yeah. Stephen called. I think Stephen called everybody. I remember texting a few friends. One friend in particular, I just remember texting her something like, you know, I couldn't find a heartbeat and I have to deliver my dead baby. Like something really just blunt and terrible.
Yeah.
But it was someone that I knew would understand and like respond appropriately. And so at this point, yeah, my mom was on her way down, and then another friend that also lives upstate also got in the car and was just like, I'm coming. And a friend that I know from college that lives in Chicago was booking a flight and was making arrangements to come. And same with my sister-in-law who lives in North Carolina. Yeah, I mean, there were other people that just showed up and didn't like come in the room, but like friends brought some food for Stephen. And Stephen's brother came, like took care of our dog, and like just so many people.
So many people.
Of people just showed up. Yeah.
So then you were taken from the triage room to another room.
Yeah, just into like labor and delivery.
Okay.
And at this point, I think they kind of just explained the process and gave us some information. And they started me on, I think it's like Cervidil, to like kickstart the process. And so contractions started pretty easily. Looking back, I think that I might have already been contracting a little bit. I think it just kind of felt like it got going pretty easily.
Yeah.
And considering what I know about like inductions, it's not always the case. And at this point, my mom was there, and I was starting to like, feel some pain, and so I opted to get some pain medication. At a birthing center, obviously that's like not something that you do. So
yeah,
at this point though, I was like, I don't really care. I just want to get through this.
Yeah.
So they gave me something via like IV, not an epidural, which just made me kind of like hallucinate a little bit, or just to have like really lucid dreams. I would kind of go in and out. Like I would fall asleep in between contractions and have these like terrible dreams. And yeah, it was just kind of awful. Yeah, like not the type of birth that I was imagining.
Right.
Obviously.
Completely. And this is probably going into the afternoon now. You've been laboring for a little bit, and so now it's afternoon. Okay.
Yeah. I want to say they started the Cervidil around noon or 1.
Okay.
And then I was given the pain medication. And then my close friend showed up, and she was in the hospital room with us. And I think there was like just news on the TV, and Stephen was just sort of resting. My mom was in one part of the room, and my friend was on the other part of the room in a chair. And remember, she was like trying to like lighten the mood a little bit, and was trying to make us laugh, and she was able to do it occasionally. And at one point, I woke up from one of these dreams and said I wanted an ice pop. And I guess I said it a couple times, and they're like, well, I think she really wants an ice pop. So at this point, it was like later in the evening. And so my friend was like, well, I'll try to go find an ice pop. And then as she was like leaving, I was like, coconut, it has to be coconut. and so she's she's not really familiar with the city. But she came back with 2 coconut ice pops.
That is good friend.
It was great. Yeah. And so things progressed pretty quickly. I remember I was most likely pretty close to transition, and I wanted everyone out of the room. I wanted my friend and my mom out, and I just wanted Stephen with me. And I actually really don't remember any of the nurses or doctors. They were all pretty unimpressive or not memorable.
Yeah. Okay.
Except for one that came in and like in the afternoon and was just sort of trying to be comforting, but wasn't. I don't know. I think I was just very very much in shock, obviously, and angry, and nothing that anyone was saying felt sincere, or
Yeah.
I wanted to just be left alone, essentially.
Yeah.
And yeah, so things, I in retrospect, things went fairly quickly. So we started probably around noon one, and Ophelia was born just before midnight.
Mm.
And I just remember like pushing and saying, like, I can't do this. I don't know how long I pushed, but just remember like telling Stephen, like, I can't do this. It's just too sad. Like, how do I push out a baby that's not alive? And I think that the nurse and the doctor at that point were feeling the emotion at that point too. Like, they were also sad. But she was born, and I remember they didn't like give her to me right away, and I was like, oh, is there something wrong? Which obviously there's something wrong, but like I thought like maybe there's something like physically wrong with her.
Yeah.
But there wasn't. There was nothing physically wrong. She's perfect. But they wrapped her up and put a hat on her, and they gave her to me. And that's when I said, she's Ophelia. And the names were, we had narrowed it down to Ophelia or Lennox. And Ophelia was Stephen's first choice, and Lennox was my first choice. And it just felt right to name her Ophelia. And yeah, it just was fitting for her.
And yeah. How big was she when she was born?
6 pounds 14 ounces.
Oh, and how long was she?
Actually, I don't remember. Like I didn't like record it myself anywhere. I'm not sure it's on her birth certificate, but yeah, it's not something I have at the top of my head.
And she had a head of dark hair, lots of hair. It sounded like.
Yes. Yeah, I remember like peeking underneath her hat, and it was very curly and dark, like my husband's hair.
Oh, is okay. I was about to say your hair doesn't look terribly curly, so it is. No. It is Stephen. Yeah. It's from Stephen.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, did you guys get some time with her after she was born?
We did. Not very much.
Was that by choice, or was that?
Maybe. I think partly, yes, our choice, and partly I felt like the hospital was ill-equipped a little bit. Like they gave us some sort of information, some packet of things, which I feel like who's like reading through these things. Like part of it was, funeral preparations and I know we had to make a decision about what we wanted to do before she was born. I'm like, how do you make these decisions right
Yeah.
now? And they didn't have a cuddle cot or anything like that. And yeah, I don't feel like I was really given the space to know what was right.
Yeah.
Um,
So not even any kind of input from nurses or anything to like, this is what to expect, and these are some things that we've done, or nothing.
no,
Oh,
nothing. No. Um, yeah, like so I held her. I invited my mom to come into the room.
mm-hmm.
And for some reason I didn't want my friend who was there. I didn't want her in the room. And I think that's, it's part of it was that I wasn't sure. It didn't feel right.
Yeah.
Like at one point, I like insisted that Stephen hold her. And I think he was maybe, hesitant or nervous or, and when he was holding her, like I thought to myself, like, oh, I should take a picture of him holding her.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, I was like, oh, I don't know, that seems inappropriate or something. Like, why I'm not going to do that. So we didn't get any photos with her. And I think I had Googled something when I was, in the hours that I was there, and read something about like getting a clipping of their hair or like, their hands and footprints.
Mm-hmm.
And they took her away at some point, to measure her. What I'm not sure what they were doing, but
Mm-hmm.
they, did get her footprint, and they, I do remember them coming back with like a box of things, and I asked if they took her hand and footprints, and they're like, oh, just her footprints. I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's fine. Even though I like wanted her handprint and I
Yeah.
wanted a clipping of her hair, I like didn't think to like ask for it. So yeah. And I think my mom and my friend both made sure that the nurses took photos of her,
Oh, good.
even though maybe they did offer to take photos. Like, I don't know. And I think maybe I even said no. I don't know. But they did take photos of her, which we did get from them. Like after we had, like a couple weeks later, we got the photos. Yeah, so we spent some time with her. My mom got to hold her. I think they like took her back to like the nurse's station for a little bit while I like rested. And then they were going to move me to a different room. And so, they brought her back to me, um, and like that was kind of like, okay, so this is the last time that you'll
Oh.
have with her, like once they moved me. Um, yeah, and I don't even know how many minutes or hours we actually spent with her, but it was not that much. And it's something that like bothers me about it, that
Yeah.
that I didn't take more time. And, I don't think I didn't look at her whole body. Like I didn't unwrap her and you know, she was in good condition. You know, from now understanding what stillbirth and all of that, like there were no visible tears on her skin, or at least what I could see. Yeah, so just, yeah, it's this part that I like kind of beat myself up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It is if it's never been on your radar, why would you think to do or ask for those kind of things? Like, yeah, so as much as you, like you said, beat yourself up about that kind of stuff, it's like, how would you know? How would you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And they didn't have like, I know that some hospitals are, have the now I lay me down to sleep people like on call.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there just wasn't any of those resources,
right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. I'm sorry. That is something that is hard to kind of think about. So your mom got to see Ophelia, and your friend did not. Your husband did, and so it was you. It was basically you three that got to meet Ophelia.
Yeah,
that's good. Were you? So then, before they transferred you to the next floor or the next wherever you were headed to, did you guys just say goodbye and then hand her back? Is that kind of basically how it went?
Yeah,
like, how are you feeling about that?
Yeah. I mean, when I first told her, I just remember like just sort of just apologizing to her and just feeling like, you know, that I let her down somehow.
Yeah.
But I do think that like, I don't know that I would have wanted hours and hours or days, even. I feel like I knew she wasn't with us.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I also was, like I said, Stephen was very much ready to be a mom or to be a dad. For me, it was something that, I knew in theory I wanted, but I didn't ever feel, even during my pregnancy, I didn't feel like this like overwhelming mothering quality. Really until close to the end. I was in like a prenatal yoga class, and then it finally like kind of like hit me that I was becoming a mother, and so then for this to happen, it felt sort of like that part of me was like cut off a little bit. Like I didn't like sing to her when I was pregnant. And so I like didn't like sing a song to her. I don't know. There's just it felt very much like an end while we were there in the hospital room. And yeah, I think we just sort of said our goodbyes, and I wanted to leave. I wanted to kind of put it behind me. Not, that sounds really cold, but
no, but like it's it's a horrible experience, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
hard. It's so hard. So yes, I get what you're saying. It does sound cold, but at the same time, I get it. I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and she was born after right close to midnight, and you were. I'm assuming you guys kind of stayed the night because, and she was in and out. So when did you say goodbye to her, and then did they discharge you that same like that the next day?
Yeah, they did discharge us the next day. Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely I said we said goodbye at some point, like in the middle of the night,
Mm-hmm.
a few hours after she was born, and then yeah, basically just was transferred to a different room, um, and slept for a few hours, um, and then the next morning was when they kind of just like a social worker came in and just sort of put me through like the things that I needed to do in
Yeah.
order to be discharged.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not the
Um,
most pleasant list
yeah,
of things. You're like, oh, yay, a funeral.
yeah,
What am I
yeah.
supposed to do with all this? Okay. So, what did you guys end up doing, deciding to do in regards to her remains?
We decided to cremate her, um, and we opted for an autopsy.
Okay.
It's because there had been no issues at all throughout the whole pregnancy, and there were no obvious signs during the delivery.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I felt like I wanted some answers if possible. And I was very certain I wanted her cremated. That I couldn't imagine like a little casket or a headstone for a baby. I just didn't feel right for me. Um, so that decision was somewhat easy to
Yeah.
make.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, leaving her at the hospital to like knowing that, you know, she was going to go through this, her remains were going to be going through this autopsy was not the most pleasant thing to have to decide on. But
Yeah.
um, it was just, I needed to have some sort of answers if I could.
Yeah. Was Stephen on the same page too? He wanted the autopsy as well.
He did, yeah. Yeah, he was definitely in support of whatever um, whatever decision I wanted to do.
And so, when you guys got discharged, then you ended up. Did you get her remained shortly after? Was that kind of a long process? I'm just unfamiliar with how that goes from in different
Um,
states.
yeah, it was not that long. Stephen handled most of that with his sister and my friend that came in from Chicago. They like went to the funeral home and all of that. I think it was maybe less than a week that they were able to um, pick up her body, or I'm not sure if they was delivered. I really didn't. I
Yeah.
could not be a part of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It just didn't have the. And I was able to make the decision about that, and then after that, I couldn't do it. And I think I think for me, like the having her cremated kind of gave us more time to like process a little bit
Mm.
and to decide what we wanted to do. I think like, having to plan a funeral is, you kind of have to make those decisions really quickly.
Right.
And that just felt like paralyzing to have to make more decisions like that. So, yeah, for me, that was a little bit easier at
Yeah.
that stage.
Right. Okay. So so as you said, it kind of gave you a little bit of time to, if you wanted to do some sort of funeral or memorial service, you could, and do that the way you wanted to without being rushed. So
Yeah.
did you guys end up doing a funeral or a memorial service for her?
We did. We did a memorial service a couple months after. Yeah, and it did take a little bit. It took a while to actually get her ashes. And Stephen actually got this really beautiful urn from his boss. Mentioned he works in tea, and they got this beautiful like piece of pottery essentially from Japan, and I don't even know it's like meant to be an urn, but it's like perfect. It's like a small little urn. Yeah, so we that part of it took a while, and I don't think I just wasn't ready to do anything. And so we just sort of took our time, and then a couple months later decided to invite family and friends, and had a really lovely memorial. Jacob Reese Beach out in Queens. The ocean is just very important to both Stephen and I, and yeah, it was just a very cloudy day. It was actually a cloudy day cloudy and rainy when we left the hospital, and then was cloudy and rainy on the day of her memorial. So, but it was lovely. We had family play some music, and we released lanterns and just did a few other things. And yeah, I was able to take the time to think about what I wanted to do and how to do it.
Yeah. I know it feels so rushed, because we had a funeral, and it was, it was rushed. It felt so. It's actually really smart to do that a little bit later. So, can you did you guys get the autopsy results back? I'm assuming several months later, because autopsies are not quick.
No, yeah. Yeah.
Any sort of conclusions from that?
There was not. It was pretty much unconclusive. The only thing that was noted was that there was something, potentially an issue with the placenta. But it was not a clear indication if that was the cause or what it was.
Yeah.
I pretty soon after met with a high risk doctor, and had switch care to a medical office, and had them review the autopsy, and yeah, it was essentially these things happen. Sometimes we don't know why they happen. And which is I kind of thought that's what was going to happen. I mean, just because there was nothing wrong until there was something wrong.
Yes. There's no indication that you'd think otherwise. So, thank you so much for sharing that story with us about Ophelia. Is there anything that you would like to tell us a little bit more about her, or anything else that you'd like us to know about her birth and about who she is?
That she actually made me a mother. As I shared, it was, something that maybe I was a little afraid of, this like transition in my life. And pregnancy kind of was relatively, easy, but kind of this like foreign thing that happened. But her life like transformed me and has, forever changed me.
Perfect.
For the better.
For the better. Perfect. Thank you so much, Victoria. That was beautiful.
Thank you.